All right, team, welcome back to After Hours. It's going to be an amazing show today. If you're interested in XRP, this is going to be the show for you. We're going to be covering some of the things that David Schwartz, co-creator of the XRP ledger, his comments on some of these government conspiracies, 10K XRP price, Clarity Act impact. We're going to cover that on this show today. And at the end, we'll also be discussing Zcash, maybe a price prediction, maybe analysis from Matt here. So it's going to be an exciting show today, team. Make sure you stick around until the end. Before we get into the show today, team, you got to become a Crypto Charge member. You got to check us out over there, okay? So Matt, what do you have to tell them about Crypto Charge?
Yeah, guys, cryptocharge.com is where we do most of our work. We've been doing this program for over 4 years now. We've really crafted it into something that I think we're all very proud of. We go live Monday through Friday, give you guys a breakdown of the charts, stock market, crypto, taking a quick peek at commodities, other things that are important that you guys keep an eye on a regular basis, giving you guys actionable insights, giving you guys up-to-date information on our DCA, any moves we're making, leverage trade ideas in our Discord community. We have our coin library on the website. There is an abundance of resources that you guys can work through. And you guys get 30 days free to check that out, plus 50% off any membership if you guys use code YouTube. If you do not use code YouTube, you will not get a free trial, and you will pay 100% of whatever you see upfront right then. So do yourself a favor, take those 30 days, explore it. Not a great fit for you day 29, not hurting my feelings. I'd prefer for you guys to at least, read those educational resources, get in the Discord, ask questions, and see if it's a good fit.
Okay, let's get into it. The man that built the XRP ledger is doubting you clowns on X and your 10K per coin price predictions. Not to say that can't happen, and that's not to say that's never going to be his idea, but it certainly isn't now. From this tweet here, David Schwartz says XRP would already be higher if $10,000, the target, were credible. Schwartz says if rich investors believe XRP could hit 10K, they would have already pushed the price to at least $20. So what's David talking about here? Let's get into this and let's build a case here for, the how XRP works, the token issuance of XRP, or how new XRP comes to market. Let's talk about this thing, and then we can get into what David's talking about here with this EV formula he's implicitly describing here. So on the first day of every month, so May 1st this month, 1 billion XRP tokens just got released. That was on the same day of the XRP Las Vegas event held in Las Vegas, where Brad Garlinghouse, David Schwartz were there talking. David Schwartz was talking with a bunch of people, and people were like live streaming or recording, and you probably saw a lot of that footage on X. And so the first of every month, 1 billion XRP tokens gets released, and 70 to 80% of those XRP tokens are then added back into Ripple escrow accounts or added to new accounts held by and custodied by Ripple Labs and their smart contracts. So, they're basically added to the queue. So it keeps pushing back how many XRP tokens, like when the final Ripple escrow release will happen. So it continuously is pushed back. And so with this, you have like a 4 to 6% inflation rate, and that's something to be aware of. But this has been occurring since December of 2017. This has just been one of the key points of XRP, and one of a point of criticism as it relates to the decentralization, centralization factor of XRP. And of course, Ripple will then sell a portion over the counter in these over the counter transactions. So they might sell a portion, they'll keep some for how much they ever see fit, and then the rest gets put back into escrow accounts. And so at the event we're talking about here, people were bringing this up about the escrow release. People were even bringing up again, burn the escrow. And then again, David Schwartz is like, why? Look at XLM. Look at November 2019. SDF did a burn. Nothing happened. Okay. So these are concepts that people don't quite understand yet. And so when we're talking about, so what's Schwartz saying in this second line here that you guys can see on screen? Schwartz says, if rich investors believed XRP could hit $10,000, they would already push the price to at least $20. And this is explained in X. And so he uses a typical evaluation measure. He's trying to take the percentage, the probability, let's just say 1% of people expect XRP to hit $10,000 per coin one day. Don't you think that it would at least be at $20 by now? Because with that formula, what you're saying there is 1% times 10,000, that today would be reflected in a $100 per coin asset. That's not reflected today. XRP is at $1.40. And so we have not seen that reflection. And so he's bringing this into account. He's basically saying, don't tell me what you believe. Show me where the money is. Okay. And so if that was truly the case, then XRP price would surely be bid up higher, but it's not. And so he ended up in this, you can see here, he says, why aren't they? Is it a conspiracy theory? You know, so he's using basic financial logic, using evaluation models to determine what could be the price, because XRP is open to everyone. Anyone could buy XRP, private companies, ETFs are purchasing XRP. There's over $1 billion in assets under management by the top 7 spot ETF issuers in America. Globally, it's over $2.6 billion that ETF managers are now custodying XRP. So there is a narrative here. But Matt, don't we just love the price predictions from the XRP community? I mean, like, come on, what are we doing here?
Oh, it's exhaustive. I feel like it's probably one of the more exhaustive communities as far as like how egregious the price predictions get. I think that's, for the most part, we've kind of honed in expectations on Bitcoin, ETH, maybe even Solana, as far as kind of like how high and how far things can go. But for whatever reason, the XRP community continues to rally around the $10,000 XRP explicitly, and the narrative behind that changes constantly, whether it's going to be BlackRock needing to hoard all your XRP and pay you an egregious APY because they need your XRP so badly, or you have all these, conspiracies about all these NDAs that are being signed right now, and all these are about central banks, and central banks are going to be utilizing XRP exclusively in their protocols, and that's going to be driving price exponentially higher. And I think there's just a huge cohort of influencers out there that have just gravitated towards these narratives because they are what gets the views and what gets the clicks and what keeps your guys' attention, because they're promising you guys something that is extremely unrealistic, right? Bearable Bull, great example of that. What's going up, guys? $10,000 XRP. Like, it is really very exhausting because there's nothing to support it. There's nothing that actually supports it, especially with the timelines that they associate with it. I think that's the part that frustrates me the most, is they'll say, oh, in 5 to 6 years, right? Or 5 to 8 years, we'll get to $10,000 because this, and this will happen. But it's just such an unreasonable series of dominoes that they set up. And none of those dominoes, even on their own, stand very firmly. And then we also have to see all those dominoes fall in perfect synchronous form. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you think about even market capitalization, which is another idea that isn't really even like a theory. It is just a measurement of capital based on, total circulating supply and total number of tokens that are out there, current market value of that. You have to consider, total global economy and other assets that are 5 times the size and how long it took them to grow to the size that they are. So can XRP hit 5 figures at some point in the future? Yeah, it's maybe possible. But you don't really have the same incentive, right? We've talked in the past about the drops of XRP that are being burnt per transaction. We obviously don't have fresh emissions that are coming out. Only escrow unlocks, and some of those tokens can bleed back into circulation. Been talks about offering staking rewards potentially, but that would change some of the mechanics of how XRP works in its raw form today. So there might be little tweaks and nuances that can change and hopefully increase price more steadily over time. But I personally believe that growth is going to come out of just consistent growth out of total market cap for crypto. And XRP will always have a very nice slice of that. But if you guys even just do the raw math of what's required for a $10,000 XRP, and you look at XRP right now at $87 billion based on the 60 billion-ish tokens that are out there right now, the amount of capital you need to see to flood into the crypto markets as a whole to achieve that price point is trillions and trillions of dollars. And I just don't think it's realistic. So I think that personally, in the next 10 plus years, seeing a 3-figure XRP, probably a realistic expectation. Asking for 5 figures or more is just a pipe dream, and it's a cute idea, but I won't be holding my breath on that. I'll continuously be stacking into other opportunities that will bring me a much more realistic ROI, and that's also where market cap plays into this. I think a lot of people forget that, XRP, when it did that first 60,000% move or whatever, market capitalization was a tiny fraction of what it is today. And that is just a narrative that people continue to push off to the side because it doesn't feed their personal wishes and desires, but it takes more capital to make that same multiple happen as market cap grows. So I think XRP has a long, successful future ahead of it, but this is a narrative that doesn't help anybody. In fact, I think it frustrates people more than anything. I've seen people on our previous videos talk about, oh, I'm very unimpressed with XRP's performance. All right, well, you just got into XRP in the last year and a half. So I think market timing, market expectations, timeline expectations, all that together can sometimes create a negative narrative of a very high quality asset that is growing at a consistent rate.
Yeah, if you've thought about buying XRP in the past, you've probably seen a lot of cute ideas online. And there's a bullish case I want to talk about, which isn't so bullish. And then there's a bearish case that people gave in response to some of the things David Schwartz was saying on X. So the bullish case was bringing into Ripple Treasury and their Ripple Prime platform. So it's connected to 13,000 banks, $12.5 trillion in asset moves. If that was moved on the XRP ledger, they say, well, that would bid up price to $625 per XRP coin. And that's completely unjustified because the XRP ledger is demand neutral. You can send and receive XRP without creating any demand on the network. There's no long-term demand in a transaction there. It's quickly sold for RLUSD or XRP, and it moves into the other assets. So that is the bullish case they were describing online. But then I saw this bearish case, and it does not look that good if you actually look at on-chain metrics. And, this is something as an XRP holder, you probably want to stay away from. I have always stayed away from XRP metrics, and I've rather given the argument that, hey, over time, the adoption that Ripple will see, that will bleed into the XRP ledger, along with the greater total crypto market. The altcoins, even today, are seeing pretty good price appreciation. Bitcoin's doing very well in the face of the stock market fumbling in this latest Iran news that's happening with the UAE and Iran. UAE attacking like 6 boats. And so now there's escalation there. And so now we see risk on markets turning over. And so I hope we don't see that in Bitcoin and crypto, but it's only a matter of time, I feel like. And so the bearish case that the alternative people were offering under some of the things that David Schwartz and the big XRP bulls were saying that, well, XRP's 41st in total value lock, XRP's 46th in developer adoption. XRP, the XRP ledger, full-time has 62 full-time developers when you compare that with Ethereum, over 31,000, Solana, 17,000. So it's really not incomparable when you look at on-chain metrics. When you look at stablecoin issuance, only 0.1%, less than 1% of real-world asset market share. So you have a $90 billion market cap in XRP, but there's no on-chain activity to show for it. And so that's where the big question. So if people are going to argue for volume on the XRP ledger, okay, well, Ripple Treasury is going to be doing transactions on the XRP ledger, but it's demand neutral and it shows no long-term prospects or no long-term price appreciation for XRP holders. That's not really an argument to me. And the bearish argument in that case sounds a lot stronger. And this was all under the Schwartz tweets that you can go look up right now. But I did want to give that to you because the argumentation is very poor. And so what I did love about David Schwartz, pat him on the back, he's talking about the Clarity Act, all right? He was talking about, while it's not perfect, it is necessary to push this through. And, I tend to agree with him, because it's establishing permanently the classification of commodities, broker-dealers, the CFTC involvement with custodians, the separation of SEC and CFTC. They're working together right now, but investment securities for the SEC, commodities for the CFTC, what gets classified. Also an exemption for decentralized finance platforms that meet a certain decentralized criteria that they've made up. And so that is what's coming with Clarity. But the holdup with that is there's a markup scheduled before May 21st, but it's looking like it could eventually be shelved. This whole Clarity Act thing that we've been talking about for a year, it could actually be shelved. And this was something I was talking about last year with the push of the Genius Act. They were trying to include a lot of the Clarity Act so they can do this one big push for it. And I don't know if I could pull up that show again, but I was like much in favor of that because now we're a year later and now we're struggling to possibly even get the Clarity Act put on President Trump's desk for signing. And we still have a markup. There's still so much steps to go through before the Memorial Day, what do you call it? Recess, Memorial Day recess. And so there's a lot of on hold here right now, Matt. And, if you look at, the U.S. as a whole, I know a lot of people have been talking about this new Fed chair and how he's dovish and how, President Trump has been explicit in his expectation for rate cuts. And, of course, Kevin Warsh is going to be more pro rate cuts than Jerome Powell. So he's supposed to come in. Kevin Warsh is supposed to come in next week, but Fed rate cuts this year, there's like a 93% of no cuts on the June meeting. And so we're like not even expecting rate cuts till later this year, even though Kevin Warsh is very pro the AI deflationary thesis and, looking at a mean of the inflation figures, but still not probably going to see rate cuts later this year, which is very helpful to risk on markets like Bitcoin and XRP and all the other ones we talk about. So, but getting back to the thesis here, Matt, the thesis has to be long-term vision for XRP. There has to be long-term holders. Spot XRP issuers have accumulated a lot of XRP, over 828 million here in America. That's a lot. That's like 1% of all XRP in dollar amount, in token amount, but $1.5 billion worth in assets under management by these ETF issuers. So that's a long-term thesis. Like we've seen, like Bitcoin, we see the ETF issuers, we've seen the Bitcoin treasuries. Unfortunately, in this year, we have seen nothing come to fruition with XRP treasury strategies by companies. Vivo Power fell through. They ended up becoming AI data center centric. They did something weird with their Ripple private equity holdings. All these other companies, it was kind of just for the narrative. That looked like they were going to do payments, but nothing ever really came to fruition. So these are all things that were promoted last year that were going to come, and then they never came, probably because of the market kind of falling a little bit down here, and XRP token probably not doing as great as everyone anticipated, especially these people like Kevin Chen at Vivo Power and all the reps there. And, there was a bunch of other ones, Trident Digital and plenty of others that were going to establish an XRP treasury, but never came to fruition because, they couldn't stand the volatility, I would assume, honestly, because that was the main thing. It's like, can you handle the volatility? Well, yeah, we're going to buy XRP and then we're going to stake it up on Flare. And it's like, you guys are doing AI data centers now. So obviously not. And so, Matt, anything to wrap up here? So some of the commentary about 10K predictions. Can you tell a little bit of the audience, like maybe what goes into your estimation of future price of XRP?
Yeah. So, obviously we always want to look at the expected amount of market capital required to reach that price. So we, for a lot of our modeling, when we use our technical analysis, we're going to be using our Fibonacci extension tool to look at a cluster of different probabilities of where we could potentially land price-wise. And a lot of people will ask me, especially on the Ask Matty show, like, by this date, what do you think XRP price is going to be? And I hate that question, and I always kick it down the road because it's such a silly question. But we look at a variety of different modeling, especially when you have a lot of price action on older assets like XRP or even like Zcash and Bitcoin, and you have a lot of different cycles to look back on. You can use multiple Fibonacci clusters to work off of to kind of target and see if there's any overlap in those areas of interest. So, when we look at XRP as a whole, and we'll take a look at the chart here in a little bit, but we can see somewhere in the rounds of, like, on the low end here, like $5.30 to upwards of over $20 to $24, using two different very large scale Fibonacci retracement zones, one that goes back over 10 years and one that's a little bit more recent here, from the previous cycle high and previous cycle low. And then even when you study a little bit more of the recent price actions developing for the last 18 months or so, a lot of those numbers continue to line up. And not that any particular, financial tool, any modeling is ever going to be 100% perfect, but it's about probability. So when we also apply those projected prices against the expected market cap required there, and then we also model it against the expectations of what we see for the entire crypto market cap, not just for XRP, they fall relatively reasonable, especially percentage-wise, both with what we've seen XRP grow in comparison against total market cap for crypto and the market cap for XRP within itself, as well as the expected growth, even on the low end for the total market cap. So even if we only see, let's say, 1/3 or 1/4 of our expected total market cap growth for crypto, XRP hitting somewhere in the $8 to $11 to $13 region is still extremely reasonable. So I think a lot of people will, take their modeling, and what they do is they go to their favorite influencer and they take the price, they pick 2 or 3 fundamental narratives, and they go, boom, that's the price we're going to hit. Or even worse, they'll reverse engineer and go, well, I want to make this much money. This is how much XRP I have. So XRP is going to get to this price. And really, I would love for XRP to go exponentially higher than where I think it might land, right? I would love for it to go to $200 a coin, $10,000 a coin. I'd love for all those things, right? It would make my life a lot easier. Probably would yap less with you guys on here on YouTube if that was the case, if we were all the way up there. But I just don't think it's reasonable, and I'd rather have lesser expectations that are a little bit more rooted in, just proportional market cap forecasting and modeling than keeping my head in the clouds and hoping for something more. I think David Schwartz shares a lot of that, and he's, I would say, very technology neutral to technology agnostic. He doesn't really lean on the side of, XRP even being the absolute best technology. I think that he's a person that is constantly evolving and looking at other pieces of tech out there that he thinks are doing well. So I think that I respect a lot of his opinions on, some of this ridiculous modeling being something we shouldn't be really spending too much time on.
And here was the other one. Ripple CTO shuts down XRP government conspiracy claims. And so like the government was secretly trying to figure out how to implement XRP. And it's just nonsensical at that point. And I don't really understand why people are making these like ad or post hoc narratives that are probably just to justify their content or whatever they're putting out there. And so that's why I want to be data driven here. And the other thing I wanted to discuss here was Brazil's central bank bans stablecoins and crypto settlement and cross-border payments effective October 1st. So full compliance is expected in 2027 in Brazil. But the narrative here is that Ripple has this Brazil hub with partners like Braza Bank and Nomad. And Nomad using the Ripple payments, including some RLUSD transactions. And Braza Bank was actually tokenizing their own Brazilian real-backed stablecoin, BBRL, on the XRP ledger. And so now with this news, it kind of puts a chink in the armor, but only for whichever layer of the Ripple infrastructure you care about most. And for us, it would be, the best argument there would be for RLUSD as a cross-border payment or XRP as a cross-border payment solution for Ripple, but now it's looking like it's only going to be trad messaging. And so on April 30th, you got this this announcement by Brazil's central bank of a ban on EFX transmitters moving with stablecoins and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, like XRP, and that is completely prohibited. Now, it is not prohibited for a Brazilian to hold Bitcoin, XRP, or to even transact with those assets, but it's the back-end settlement of these remittance firms. And so you can't take, someone can't, I'm a remittance company, Maddie brings me Brazilian reals, then they give it to me, and I'm going to send it across the world, and I'm going to convert that to USDC or USDT. I can't do that anymore to settle in Japan with yen. So that's just, they're going to be doing traditional foreign transactions. They're going to be traditional messaging. So this kind of puts Ripple in, the Swift competition, right? Because Ripple Labs is not in competition with Swift. It was for blockchain settlement, cross-border, moving the blockchain, but now it's like one-to-one comparison here. And so whether that partnership is able to be retained based off new regulation laws in Brazil, we'll have to wait and see. But this isn't really abnormal because the UAE has similar laws like this. Saudi Arabia, what else? What other countries did I see out there that have similar laws like this? China, foreign transactions with settlement on blockchain is completely prohibited, but the holding of the asset is still valid. And so that's something I wanted to talk about. But, it's like $8 to $9 billion is settled a day in Brazil, and 90% of that was coming via stablecoin. So I'm wondering what kind of impact that's going to have if remittances and cross-border payment solutions can't use stablecoins, And so I was reading some of it, and it's just like next-gen API and messaging is doing good enough. And so, but to put that regulation against stablecoins was very interesting, and I couldn't really figure out why they would want to prohibit that. But I am seeing it across the world, though. And so maybe there's something I'm not realizing that is not a good example of stablecoin settlement. Maybe it's probably because it's on public blockchains, and maybe there needs to be a private solution like here in America, like Connexus by JP Morgan. They have their own private permission blockchain where you can send money and you can send stablecoins on that blockchain. And so I would assume that's the reason why for all these countries for sending stablecoins. I don't know, Matt, isn't that the logical conclusion here?
So, like you said, they're not banning retail from holding stable coins, from onboarding local currency into stable coins, or any of those things. So retail can still interact with stable coins. This is limiting it on a remittance level. So remittance providers are not able to utilize stable coins. So one, we're intentionally slowing the system back down, right? Like you just mentioned, there was a tremendous amount of volume that was being done via stable coins. We are intentionally slowing down that system. We are reintroducing friction into a system that was improving quite dramatically. Brazil is a pretty big remittance partner as a whole. I think that a lot of this comes down to, probably lobbying from banks and other, charter banks and people who benefit from the friction and money that they make from those FX transactions. Allegedly they want to, crack down on illicit money transfers and AML and that good stuff, even though we've just talked pretty extensively about here in the US, that issuers like Tether have the ability to essentially destroy stable coins that are even in self-custody wallets and reissue those within, government wallets if there's a subpoena that's been issued. So we have the ability to issue the guardrails to eliminate a lot of those issues that Brazil is concerned about. I think the bigger issue, especially when you consider a region like Brazil taking the step forward when previously Brazil's actually taken some pretty decent steps to create framework for crypto, is to prevent capital flight. So a lot of currencies around the world are not as valuable and it's not as stable as like US dollar, or even the euro, or even the pound. So when you have the ability to very quickly and easily swap from local currency to USD and be able to hold and stay inside USD, that puts pressure on local currencies that are less valuable and less stable. Maybe that's not the only reason why, but that could be a very big reason why they're trying to protect this TradFi system, because it's not an efficient system. And I think if we were to look at total amount of costs saved from the years that we spent sending stablecoins through Brazilian rails and cutting out a lot of those FX providers, I think that that's probably where that solution's setting in right now. There has been an enormous loss in money made from these FX providers, and of course, by de facto, taxation, right? There's an inability to get as much tax revenue as you can from stablecoin transactions as you can from when there's 3 or 4 different choke points in a transaction from traditional FX providers or liquidity providers within your country. So I think there's always going to be mixed messaging that they give us for the real reasons why, but those are some of the things that I was thinking about and reading about as we were talking about this article.
Yeah, and you could also do it on a permission chain. So I just see eventually it coming to a place where the recognition of permission chains and stablecoin movement for banks and institutions, that just becomes like a no-brainer because it's fast and efficient, and it's not public. And so that's where the direction of our like major 4 banks are taking in the US. And so I would assume that's going to happen globally, just because the leaders in banking in America, superior nation all around, using stablecoin settlement or looking into blockchain-based solutions and it being cheap and efficient, that's a way. But for Ripple Labs, the company, this is a for-profit company and they're private. And so they've purchased Hidden Road, Rail, G Treasury last year, all for this one-stop shop payment solution for custody, for payments all around the world. And one of their big hubs that they released just a couple of weeks ago is Brazil. And so this kind of slap in the face. Does this hinder the partnership with Ripple and some of the entities down in Brazil? I don't think so, because Ripple Payments can operate without DLT. So we're not able to see, as it relates to Ripple Payments, how much is in standard messaging and how much is RLUSD settlement, XRP tech stack. Like, we don't get to see that. And so I don't think this is going to hinder the partnership, but it is zero on-chain activity. And so that's the big message here, and a little bit more that you can understand about how Ripple Labs operates. And Brad Garlinghouse says everything is centered around XRP, but I just see that as a one-liner for people to get excited about. I got excited. You get excited about when you see that because it's the asset you hold. But take your emotions out of it and look at it. Is XRP at the center of everything they're doing? I think the case is pretty hard to make that kind of argumentation. And so, Matt, on the charts though, we talked about XRP this show. Zcash, I think it's like in the top 6 best performing crypto assets of the last 7 days. These are some assets that I think that people will want to see.
Yeah, let's definitely take a quick peek at the charts here. As of time of recording, we had just pierced 80K just a little bit ago here on Bitcoin. We're just trading slightly below that right now, but we are seeing some continued momentum here on the Bitcoin chart here, poking over those previous double tops. We've covered this pretty extensively on our show, that we're seeing all that classic breakout backtest behavior that we want to see in Bitcoin. There's some assets that are leading and some that are lagging right now. And I would say XRP is a far cry from our biggest laggard. So I'd say it's kind of like middle ground as far as progress is concerned when we're looking at some of the structural clues on the 4-hour and the 6-hour time frames. With XRP, we still have some very good structure that's being held in here. I'm very happy with that. We've shown good buy demand and bids continue to come in that $1.30 region, which is for over a year and a half, an area of interest that I pointed to over and over as a very liquid point that we are going to likely revisit, and we're going to probably find some larger testing that's going to be done in those areas. I still believe that we are developing what looks to be a right shoulder and a massive inverse head and shoulder structure here. If that breaks, we'll probably see a move towards at least like the $1.90, $2 region. So we're coiled up in here quite nicely. As long as we're able to maintain above like this $1.35 region, we're in a very good spot here for XRP. We dropped briefly below the 50-day moving average. You see illustrated in green here. We're trying to recover above that. It looks like we're also creating like a flag here after creating a nice little breakout there, again, off of our key levels here in XRP. So overall, I think that XRP is in a very healthy spot to continue higher here. Let's also remember that alts have been behaving the way they're behaving because of the increase in Bitcoin dominance. So we're seeing a Bitcoin recovery with a increase in Bitcoin dominance. That is classic textbook Bitcoin behavior, especially after an extensive bottoming cycle. Now, let's talk about one of our stronger assets out of here, Zcash. And I just can't believe how many people have asked me, hey, Matt, is it a good time to get into privacy now? I've been reading about Zcash. I feel like I missed the boat on privacy. Well, you kind of did miss the boat a little bit, but it is what it is, right? You gotta you gotta get in front of the opportunity when it's there. No one's excited about an opportunity when it's at an all-time low or when it's still bottoming out, but it is what it is, right? And I think this is also just a lesson that you're not going to win every trade the way you expect it to. Timelines sometimes go faster than you expect them to, sometimes slower. Zcash exceeded my expectation dramatically with timing, both with the breakout, even with this most recent correction recovering here. It has been beautiful price action with some very good breakout backtest behavior. Now, as we discussed, there's some imbalances lower I'd like to see satiated, but let's talk about the price action that's in front of us right now. So we're going to peel back out here to the 12-hour frame here, and then I'll come back down to the smaller time frames in a second here. So we had this long correctional structure in here. We had Zcash get out to what was a $700 and something, $750 here on the aggregated chart. Went into a long flagging structure. So from November of last year all the way through just about March, flagged in here. You can see there's clear compression in here. Beautiful break of this compression structure. When we take a look here more closely, though, after we move past the break of the flag, we can see that there was a clean basin here that was being built. So a strong accumulative basin here. We can see that this flipping here also was recovered. We saw a really nice breakout. We saw an additional flag that was developed here, and we've seen another break of that flag here as well. So a lot of people will get excited about a particular percentage gain in a day, or hey, over the last X amount of days, this has done really well. For me, what really is exciting is when those percentages or gains over a certain period happen in conjunction with strong structural follow through. And that's what we're seeing here on Zcash is beautiful textbook follow through. We've talked a lot with our team, and most of my team has taken profits because we've seen a $25 to $30 average for most of my team here. So even as we got up into the $350, $400, $700 range, most of my team has taken something off, paid themselves back, put some money back in their pockets. But now we're talking about next steps, right? Because we have a new structure that's been built in here. Let's actually take all this away and just look at the Fibonacci. We have a new structure that's been built. We have a clear bottom that's coming here, especially when we're looking at this November through March price action in here. That 236 Fibonacci retracement there is beautiful breakout backtest behavior. We're trying to push over that 382. So if we're going to see Zcash not have immediate success over this retracement range, it's very likely that Zcash is going to continue towards at least 520 to upwards of maybe 615 as those upper bounds of retracement. If we get a successful break here on Zcash and we see a full extension-based break, likely over $1,000 being that next leg, right around 1,071. When you look at the larger Fibonacci retracement tool, puts you around 1,100. We see 1,400. You see a variety of different values in here, but we're all talking about, no matter which Fibonacci range we're looking at, a 4-figure Zcash price. So I think worst case scenario, we probably travel up towards the mid fives. Best case scenario, we break towards a little over $1,000. But I think that we have some beautiful price action here, and I hope that Zcash continues to be that asynchronous leader in the altcoin market that continues to blaze the path for other alts to follow something similar here, because this is what makes charting very easy. Once you have that breakout, you watch for the back test, you're able to make additions, you're able to make reductions out of your portfolio. It becomes very easy once you have price actually trending. And that's what Zcash is doing right now, is it is showing that very beginning trend behavior. So we'll talk more about on maybe another episode if you guys are in the Discord with us, talking about maybe some leverage-based trades for Zcash, or maybe some swing trades. If you guys are looking to make maybe a 20 or 30% gain, for those of you guys who are willing to be a little bit more tactical and wait for a proper entry. But I think that Zcash could be one of those examples that is a continued breakout example. We're not going to take a look at it right now. Algorand is also doing a very similar behavior. We saw, actually a brand new all-time low set, and then we saw a beautiful breakout, and we've seen a nice little double bottom in there, and we're seeing that continued strength there in the Algorand market. So don't count out everything in your portfolio that hasn't done the move yet. Things that are still suppressed, for example, HBAR is still suppressed, Cardano is still suppressed. We have our laggards, we have the suppressed assets, but you also have the leaders out there, and you can't own everything, right? So you just got to be picky, you got to be patient, and just trust the process and trust the charts.
Yeah, people are struggling with crypto right now. Some are complaining about the opportunity cost, but also that they're not seeing the expected rewards that crypto promises. Well, I build my Bitcoin position at $69,000 average cost basis for me, and I'm up 16%. With Zcash right now from its lows, its local lows, up over a 2x. So these are the metrics you're seeing On the flip side of those critiques, and I wouldn't change it any other way. I love being a digital asset investor because it's very exciting. I love covering the news with you guys. I love being or trying to be an expert in my field as best as I can, being data driven, and then ultimately making those moves in my portfolio to see the best reward. And so I hope you guys can feel that same confidence that Matt and I have. So team, that's all we have for today. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. Make sure you like this video. Do not leave this video without liking it. This week we have this Wednesday, Matt is doing the Ask Matty show, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. So make sure if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down for Matt. Also, this Thursday, Matt will be doing a TikTok live that you'll get alerted on our social platforms and our Discord. But that is all we have for today, T. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.